We work in both the US and in Nigeria to raise awareness and build collaborative partnerships which provide a powerful roadmap to address erosions of religious freedom in Nigeria. Just to give you a brief, so this is an ICON room. The club is Genocide and Rights Abuse Nigeria. If you're not already following, please click on the green button above us and just join you on the clubhouse. And for the audience out there, welcome, welcome, welcome. This room shall be recorded and broadcasted on our other social media platforms. So to our clubhouse audience, if you're joining in, I just want you to know that this room would be recorded and then it could be broadcasted on our YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Facebook. Okay, so you know. Again, welcome. We have our distinguished guest with us today, Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi. This is not an official introduction yet, but I just want to recognize his presence. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for accepting to join us. This room is about discussions on Nigeria, the happenings, and the call to actions that we all need to step into is our major focus on this room. So welcome again. I see a few people joining in, and so I won't get tired of saying this room shall be recorded and broadcasted on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Okay, so I'll just jump right into it. Welcome, Sir Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi. It is an honor to have you join us. I muted you, so I will talk without interruptions. That's what happens on Clubhouse. So people, Archbishop Kwashi is very new to Clubhouse. So I want to welcome you to Clubhouse and to this room. For some of you, you'll be wondering who Archbishop Kwashi is. So I'm going to read his bio in brief, actually, just a summary. But this is a distinguished man. He's great. He's amazing in his works. He's patriotic. And he's passionate about Nigeria. The Most Reverend Dr. Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi, that's what I call him, is the Bishop of the Anglican Diocese of Jos and the Archbishop of the Ecclesiastical Province of Jos in the Church of Nigeria. Archbishop Kwashi is also the General Secretary of Global Fellowship of Confessing Anglicans, GAFCON, since 2019. He became the third bishop of the newly created Anglican Diocese of Jos in 1992 and in 2008. He was consecrated Archbishop of Jos Province in the Church of Nigeria. Bishop Kwashi began by following a military career, but he felt a religious calling in 1976, and so decided to follow a religious life. He was ordained an Anglican priest in 1982. He went to serve in several rural and urban parishes and was also the rector of a theological college. In 1987, His church and vicariate were totally burned down during Muslim riots. Bishop Kwashi, I want to say here, has been speaking about the insecurity issues that have been happening in Nigeria, and I'm sure he will talk more. So I go back to the bio. He is the author of several books, such as Evangelism and Mission, Biblical and Strategic Insights for the Church Today. And he is married to Gloria, and they have 6 children. And one of the children is also a priest. They have 50 orphans living with them in just northern Nigeria, and another 470 at their school. Sir, it is an honor and a privilege to have you join us on this platform to discuss on ethnicity and religion as drivers of Nigeria's insecurity. Welcome, sir. Can you unmute yourself? Hello, sir.
Thank you. I have unmuted. I'm new to this machine.
Yes, we understand that.
Thank you very much, Yo. Let me say how grateful I am to be on this program with you. I'm deeply grateful and privileged. And I must say that you have over-introduced me. I stopped being Archbishop of the province since I took on the GAFCON General Secretary. That would be too much for me to have taken. So 2 years ago, a new Archbishop of Jos was there, elected, but I still am a member of the House of Archbishops in the Church of Nigeria. And indeed, I'm married to Gloria with our children and the several children that we have. Thank you very much for that introduction.
It's a privilege, sir. And thank you for the correction. It's really, I'm really excited that you are here with us, knowing the topic of discussion. So without further ado, sir, I would give you the time to just dive into this topic, to just talk to us about ethnicity and religion as drivers of Nigeria's insecurity. People, if you're here, before Archbishop Kwashi goes ahead, I want to let you know that there'll be time for us to ask him questions, to share your opinions from what he will discuss, and even your thoughts on the topic as you've sent it. So hold on to your thoughts. Engaging with your questions and discussions. Thank you again for joining us, everybody. Sir, and I'll give you the room. I will mute myself so you can go into the...
Thank you. It's a privilege for me to speak on this topic, a topic that I must say that I'm going to share my ignorance with everybody here, and I will be willing to answer questions as much as I am able. First, let me thank God for the gift of peoples all over the world of different ethnic backgrounds. So my approach will first of all be the positive of ethnicity and religion. I come by birth from Ampere, which is a very small town, but it's a leading district in Kanke local government of Plateau State. Ordinarily, my own clan, which happens to be within the ruling clan of Ampere district, is a very small clan. We're not many at all. Our number is small. So ethnically, I am a minority, even within the Angas people. But it pleased God that from that small ethnic group, my father traveled with a gentleman called Max Warren to Zaria City in 1927 and met with Dr. Miller, who was setting up a school in Zaria City and a clinic and a small church. And my father studied under Dr. Miller and was later on to serve and study under Bishop Bullen, who was a visiting missionary and later on moved on to Sudan, where he finally died. By 1929, the Emir of Zaria gave the small Christian community in the city a space that is known as Wusasa Zaria today. And they moved in there and settled in 1930, where my father graduated and became a teacher there, until the colonials who were setting up northern Nigeria were looking for staff and especially teachers. Eventually, my father was moved to start the Central School, middle school in Panchin, and became its first headmaster in 1936. This is quite a long way before Northern Nigerian government was formed. My father had become a Christian from a pagan background, from a ruling house, and had also by now received Western education to its best levels that he could get at that time. And he was able to get a grade 2 certificate, Cambridge. That opened doors for him to become a pioneer in education in the government of Northern Nigeria when it was later on formed. So my ethnic background was to have been viewed positively for me, because the stories that we heard from the history books as we read was that several Fulani invaders had attacked the towns of Ampere and most areas of Panshin without success. But with the coming of education and the mission enterprise, violence became abhorrent, and it became no longer popular as a means of settling disputes or as a means of doing any business. As a matter of fact, the violence of the Fulani raiders in the early 1900s was more to get slaves and for slave trading. But with the coming of education and missions, this became unpopular. By the time the Second World War had ended, violence became so unpopular because it became obvious to all warmongers and warlords that no matter how they wanted to impose their views, whether it's communism or socialism or using religion to forcefully convert people, it became unpopular, except to sit at table and discuss. Now, why violence has come back 50 to 70 years now is yet for history to discuss. But that is my view on how ethnicity has become so positive. And it's not only in the case of my father, nor my tribe, but you will find that most people identify with their ethnicity begin from positives. There is not a single ethnic group that I know of that began by killing itself. They began more by gaining their daily livelihood in agriculture and in the means by which they could survive. And then they only engage in battles to defend their lands and property and territories. So I see ethnicity from a positive background if ethnic groups were allowed to survive on their own. But secondly, let me say that ethnic groups had diverse commercial enterprises that was unique to each group. So in the days before the coming of colonials or even missionaries, there were trading routes from one ethnic group to another. Some provided salt and others provided grains. And it used to be trading by barter. And one of the stories I was told was that people went and kept their goods and wares in the market routes and went and slept. They would wake up the following day and find what was kept in exchange without any physical discussions. True or not, I don't know, but this was something I have been told that used to occur. Until slave trade came, then violence was introduced, not only to take away slaves, but destruction of livelihood, farmlands, and taking away of people to be sold, you won't believe it, for gunpowder, for alcohol, and for salt or other things that were imported. So ethnic backgrounds are endowed, each ethnic backgrounds are endowed with unique commercial quantity of produce that they could use for trade by barter. These are all positives that we must look at, because in Nigeria today, and indeed all over the world, each ethnic group has been endowed with a blessing that it could share with another ethnic group. Now let me dive into the modern times where the negatives have come into it. Just before then, my third point, religion. With the introduction of the Christian religion, it became very, very popular to lay down arms as a means of settling issues, because the Bible teachings took prevalence as authority for life in very, very many ethnic communities. And civility became the order of how to settle issues, because as human beings, there will always be issues to be settled, one form or another. Perhaps dealing with dubious people, dealing with thieves, dealing with adulterers, dealing with those who are just fraudulent, and so on. But it was no longer popular to settle issues and disputes by violence, because the Holy Bible was now introduced into different ethnic communities. And the commonality of how to deal with issues spread, because the Bible was one, and the teaching was one. Voluntarily, the Christian religion. Of course, many people didn't, but those who did found that this religion and its teachings abhorred violence and provided a better means of settling all issues. What more, it provided also a means of education, which provided another means of opening the doors to the world of success, of commerce, of civilization, and of dealing with the rest of the world that also embraced education and sometimes Christianity. So these 3 points are my positives on ethnicity and religion. Now let me deal with the negatives. The first negative is that the ethnic groups that were first to receive education, and sometimes together with the Christian religion, tended to colonize what they got and didn't share it with the next ethnic group, the closest ethnic group. Whether it be in education, they kept it only within their own ethnic group and didn't want another ethnic group to get. You can say this is greed or even hoarding. That has provided bitterness Because those who didn't get when others got tended to change religion to fight back. When God blesses an ethnic group, the intention of God throughout the Bible, Old Testament and New, is for you to share with your neighbors, is to make sure that what you got in its quality and content was shared. Now, when the sharing is absent, resentment is sown, bitterness is harbored, and over time, there will be massive disagreement, and sometimes it could go violent. Now, this is not only in Christian religion, this is all religions. But ethnicity ought not to be like that. So, in the ethnic group, if you do not have those who are generous in what they have received that has made their lives better, then by hoarding what they have and by not sharing it with the next ethnic group, they are sowing a seed of jealousy that grows into envy, and it might become a permanent sore point of dispute, sometimes violently. So ethnicity, for all the blessings and the good that I have said, if it does not bring good to another ethnic group, is going to create very many problems. Religion, by its very nature, ought to bring development. And any religion that does not bring good to any community and physical, spiritual, educational, and social development to any community, that religion must be held suspect. Because what is its purpose? And that needs to be discussed all the time in each generation. The purpose of religion is to stabilize a community, give it a sense of the extraordinary presence of God, the fear of God, the love of neighbor, and generosity, and kindness, and love. That is what religion ought to be for any community. And this point is very, very important. Now, when we bring it in our context in Nigeria, I find it myself, even me, completely shocked when in the 80s in Zaria, I find that dichotomy was being sown within the systems of human life in northern Nigeria. And bear in mind, I was born here in northern Nigeria. I have lived, my earliest education was the local Almajiri school with other kids because I had to move around. I was an only child for a while, and I had to move around with my friends. And so when they went to their Quranic schools, I also sat with them. Malam did not drive me away. We shared what we had, and then they would come to my house. I would also go and bring out food, and we shared. We grew up with many of them, some of whom are still alive. So it came to me as a shock when religion became the main issue of contention. But you must bear in mind that by this time, Nigeria's political systems were beginning to develop in such a manner that religion was the tool of division, and division on ethnic lines or division on religious lines. So I literally have seen these things grow from 1980, where in Zaria, the slogan was Islam only, and Christians also began to retreat into their defensive modes, and ethnic groups also began to see that religion was being used to suppress, to oppress, and to segregate. So everybody soon went into their closets and remembered that they were no longer just Nigerians. They were first and foremost ethnic, and then their religions counted. And as if to make the issues even worse, the politicians, having found this an easy way, continued to increase in pumping the doctrine of religious segregation on all the ethnic groups, beginning in northern Nigeria and now spread all over Nigeria. I will remember that in the 80s, after the burning of the churches in 87, after the burning of the churches in Zaria, I made a presentation. And at the heart of my presentation to Justice Donley panel was that a lot of those who came to burn churches, destroy houses, and kill some people were young people, very young, 12 years, 14 years. And they had sticks and knives. So not many were killed, but over 100 churches were burnt and several businesses were destroyed by arson. Fast forward to 2000. Those who did these destructions in Zaria at that time, well, were not arrested. Some were arrested but released. No one was punished. So, of course, by the time in 2000, with the now political party, with Obasanjo in power, the religious doctrine of segregation had gone deep. So those who were probably 10 years at that time, in 1987, were now 37 years old. So the viciousness with which attacks were done in Jos, for example, in the year 2001, weapons were used, whereas in 87 it was sticks and knives. In the year 2001, within a day, over 150 lives were lost. And since then up to now, the killing spree is just unspeakable. Now, the role at which governments play in settling and helping religion to become positive and for ethnicity to become positive, it is the role which the politicians took over government and displayed complete nonchalance and feigned ignorance and have not dealt with it as they should, because government should provide security for people. Government should protect the innocent, the poor, and the helpless. Government should arm security forces to protect citizens, not politicians, but the citizens of Nigeria. And from 2001, this failure of government to arrest people and try them for arson or for murder opened the door for criminals from all over the world, because the number of arms that have come into Nigeria with the tacit support of those who have supplied them, mostly from outside of Nigeria, has helped criminals and disgruntled elements in Nigeria to team up together and to kill and murder mercilessly, to kidnap, to make sure that people are abducted for price. So the fuel that has brought all of this began from little, but now it has become so massive that Nigeria as a nation, and particularly the poor, especially the poor, are living under terror. The amount of terrorism that has flooded the nation of Nigeria is unquantifiable. And so if we're going to look at ethnicity and we're going to look at religion, we must also look at the role of government, because government ought to give support to religion in doing its good work. But now, the absence of government supporting religion doing good has made even good people turn bad. The absence of government in supporting religion, that is building schools and hospitals, because every time we build schools and hospitals, they get destroyed. So the absence of government in all of this has demoralized good people across ethnic groups, across religious groups, people who want to do good to society, people who want to contribute to the development of society, are now handicapped because government, they eat their food, they drink their tea, while the number of orphans and widows and the oppressed and the physically challenged, the number is on the increase incredibly. And sometimes I wonder how our political leaders sleep. Because if you look at the people that are being killed in Nigeria, these are the poor of the poorest. They will never They will never see a million naira, most of them. But they're being killed, and nobody's saying a thing. To make matters worse, the poor live on subsistence farming. Their farmlands are being destroyed. When cows cannot eat them, these people come with their knives and cutlasses and destroy farmlands, beans, carrots, anything. And the government is mute. They have said nothing, to the best of my knowledge, about those destroying people's farmlands. And yet the same government is talking about agriculture being the means by which Nigerians will survive. So this inconsistency of government has made the divisions and the big dichotomies between religions and ethnicity wider and wider. Let me conclude. I have not lost hope. I still believe that the days of evil are numbered. And it is not uncommon in history for God to intervene and do a miracle in such a massive manner that the wicked and evil people we see today will suddenly disappear. God did it in history, several histories. I do not want to cite here, but he has done it in history. And so we are living our own history. And I'm praying that the day will come when my religion will provide nothing but goodness to society, to communities, regardless of whether they are Christians or not, regardless of whether they are my ethnic group or not. I'm looking forward to the day when a government will give me the support as I provide school and help for the poor, for the needy, for orphans, and for widows, and for the society. And perhaps long after I'm dead and gone, a greater society will rise because one good man lived on the face of this earth. I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for bringing out the positive and the negative sides of ethnicity and religion. We do appreciate your wealth of experience and your own personal experience into this discourse. Thank you so much. In a bit, we're going to open the hand-raising button so people who have questions or have thoughts to add to what Bishop Kwashi has shared would come up. In the meantime, I would relinquish it to the next of my moderator, MK. MK has something to add and share to this discussion. MK, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ven Lannap, and our beloved Bishop Benjamin Kwashi. We thank you for appearing on this meeting. It's nice to continue to engage you on the genocide and rights abuse platform of Clubhouse. Specifically, ICON is a partner. ICON is International Committee on Nigeria, and it's a partner on this with a couple of other groups on this Clubhouse. And so we work together to deal with the issues of genocides and rights abuse, specifically in Nigeria. And it's a continuing thing as we continue to engage on this. So the topic, I mean, when Ven raised this topic, we struggled with trying to frame the topic, but again, one thing was clear. We wanted to deal with a proper understanding of ethnicity. We wanted to understand, get a proper understanding of religion. We also looked at what Bishop Kwashi has sort of postures as governance of government, which is politics. We wanted to also see how that interacted with politics. And then, of course, in some sense, we wanted to look at how also that interacted with the idea of resources and specifically in this context, land resources and how all of this combined to create the challenge of insecurity that we have, and then to trace it very clearly. So it was necessary, therefore, to be very conceptually clear on what we mean, because a lot of people will not understand ethnicity for what it is, and the characterization that the bishop has given to it, negative and positive, is the kind of concept that technical people will try to make a difference when they talk of ethnicity and ethnicism. Ethnicity is a positive word. It is identity, people's identity. But when it is negatively applied, it becomes ethnicism, or sort of the mindset of it is called ethnocentrism. So we wanted to make that clarity. And then, of course, on the point of religion, it's also to give it conceptual clarity. There is the difference between dogmatic religion, where we indoctrinate people. There is no philosophy to read. There is no jurisprudence of good to read, but people just take religion, dogmatize it, and then it becomes sort of more of an intellectual exercise that does not cultivate the human spirit and the good in the human spirit. Rather, it reinforces the negative disposition of a man who is absent of conscience. And so that is what we sort of begin to create a dichotomy between dogmatism and faith, which faith leads us into spirituality, dogmatism leads us into patterns that create that. And so it's important we get that concept very clear in our minds, and how that begins to deal with politics, which is politics generally. The core object of politics is essentially to provide governance, and governance is about fair, equitable use of resources and all that in a sustainable way, in the way that serves everybody and all of that. And then we come to the whole concept of Africa. How did Africa live? Go to your community, and Bishop Kwashi raised it, and it is not far-fetched, because I lived up in my community when he about the experiences where we keep our wares. Growing up in my own village, we saw situations where people kept their wares, would go to farm, the price are there, even in the times of money, not even only in the times of barter, even when money had come in. I got the experience where people, where mothers and fathers and brothers can leave their wares just even by the house side. The people who come take the value, or even your neighbor will be there and say, okay, you came to buy, look at it, they will take the ware, and you will come back and see. Because what informed that? What was the philosophy? What was the ideology that informed that in Africa, and how did it change? How did we come? Because Africa was essentially a communal society. A communal society was underpinned by the thinking, the philosophy that we live. Of course, today in technical literature, you find it called Ubuntu, because they've taken that experience, extracted that African experience from the Southern African region, and they found a word that expressed that, and they call it Ubuntu. But essentially, it conveys that philosophy of communalism, which is authentically the African economic and social ideology. And that ideology presupposes that the weak exist for the strong, and the strong exist for the weak. The poor exist for the rich, and the rich exist. So that is how we exercise ourselves. When we are complementary, we are not competitive. It is the entry of capitalism, essentially, that began to change the view. And you saw colonialism, slave trade, and all that, and so on, began to change that worldview in Africa. And you need to, when you begin to study clearly, you will see that. That was not to say that Africans were not human, they did not have, but there were dispute resolution systems that balanced everything clearly. So I think that this is the foundation perhaps that we need to lay and to understand. When we understand these conceptual issues, it gives us a better perspective to sort of make the discourse clearly in terms of its conceptual implications and clarity and so on. So I guess that's my first intervention, and subsequently, as people will contribute, I'll pose some questions to Bishop so that we can get some practical from more practical experience to make these concepts clearer in tangible form. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MK, for shedding more light to that. Again, before I go on, I want to say that there's a link above us. If you look at it, that's the link to our YouTube channel. It's being recorded and broadcasted for people just joining the discussion. So you can go there too, or you could share it with your friends to get into this discussion. It's a much needed discussion for awareness, for enlightening, and the way forward about what's going on in Nigeria. So if you have questions and you have thoughts, please do not hesitate. Raise your hands or send me a back channel, and I would ask Archbishop Kwashi, because he's here for us today. Then, sir, I have a question that I'm curious about, sir. And my question is, with all the talks, because there have been so many talks about what is going on in Nigeria, going down memory lane with history, which is very important, and all the aspects, the positive and the negative, and all of that. My question is, what's your thought or suggestion to individuals, to groups, and just organizations? I want to even put the government aside because we've touched them. What would you suggest would be the responsibilities that we need to take on as citizens of this country, Nigeria?
Well, then, thank you very much for that question. I think that there is no better time for citizens to begin to think alike, if you like. Where is a place where people begin to look for like-minded leaders and young people to develop a thought for the birth of a new nation, a real new nation. Because you see, if you take history, in my time as a little boy before independence, my father, who was by now a warden, a principal of a school, he would order stuff for me from England, and in 2 weeks, I got them. Our post box, home post box, was outside, and the post and telegraph had runners like today's DHL and UPS. They would come and drop letters outside our box, outside of our house. There were no fences. And this continued up until around 1975. From 1975 till date, we began to degenerate in trust. We began to degenerate in service provision. The civil service died, and things just started going haywire, education, and so on and so on, which means for people like me, we lived an untrue life of a Nigeria. What we now have today, we have to deal with as the real Nigeria, where people kill one another for free and nothing is done. Officially, you can get killed in Nigeria, nothing will happen. A first-class chief in Plateau State here was murdered. They told us they will turn all the stones. They have turned all the stones. We've heard nothing. Several important dignitaries, army barracks, all killings. So this is now for us to know this is the real Nigeria. How can we solve it? So it will take Nigerians with a heart who mean well, who can practically take the bull by the horn. I'm not talking about people taking up arms. Arms have solved nothing, because what has happened to Nigeria now, unfortunately, is that communities are defending themselves. Now, the problem with that is that when young people are armed in an unregimented fashion, crime will not be far. So that's not the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about real people who have thought deeply of how to begin to change the ideologies that has now made Nigeria. And you hear people say the Nigerian factor, which is absolute nonsense, because it simply means mediocrity. Where are those people? You must begin to band together. And this has nothing to do with age. Old people, young people. For example, I am back now to teaching in primary and secondary school. And I teach the young hearts, largely ages from age 12. I teach from age 12 to 18, SS1, SS2, and SS3. I tell them that evil has never conquered anything. Even Napoleon Bonaparte himself, he died, and died young. He couldn't sleep. There is no way blood will be shed in the way it has been shed in Nigeria for the leaders today to tell me that when they're out of power, they will sleep and sleep well. It's not possible. Human blood is human blood. It speaks. It cries up to the highest heavens. So every negligence that's going on today, every carelessness, every murder is going to be accounted for. So the young minds now should begin to know that evil does not solve anything, and that goodness has always conquered at the end. It does. If you doubt it, watch any Western movie. It doesn't matter whether it's Django or any of these, The Good, Bad, and Ugly, all the time. This is even non-religious movies. They depict for us how evil never wins. And besides, if truly there's a God, and honestly there is, God has never blessed evil. He never does, and will not start with Nigeria. So all the evil have their days numbered, and it's going to be very glaring in the eyes of men for everybody to see. So the first thing is commitment to Nigeria, patriotism to Nigeria, and take heart with God, with courage and boldness. Yes, they will kill, but they will not kill everybody. Some good man will remain, some good woman will remain, and there will be a rising unto goodness, and goodness will always prevail. Evil has never won any battle.
Okay, let me. Well, of course, you laid the foundation that what people will say the arc of the universe tends towards justice, meaning that any day. Drawing from there, what is your sense of the progression of evil? I mean, people say there is night and day, and you always see that when the day comes, the light is brighter, and at some point it goes through a season of night, and then we come back after the midnight, the brightest moment of day comes, and so on and so forth. What is your sense? Because when you look at the progression, and you have said it clearly, in terms when you raise the point that the sophistication. Yesterday it used to be just quarrels and fights. It became quarrel over using sticks to fight, and then it grew to some level of sophistication in the weaponry that is used, and then even in the thought process that has grown to sophistication, the arguments and all that that had gone on. What is your sense in specific terms on the two sides of the divide? The people who suffer, who go through these pains. What is your sense of a true, if you like, mental and humanitarian support that you think, as an individual who is going through this, what would be your advice to such people who are passing through these challenges to respond to it from the humanitarian point of view, from the mental and psychological point of view in their orientation? And then, of course, those who watch on in terms of the humanitarian. And I don't mean mere these people are suffering. They have issues of even food, they have issues of clothes, they have issues of livelihood and a lot of other things. What would then be your advice in responding in those two positive ways to deal with people themselves, to deal with this challenge? How do they deal with it, who are involved in it, who are encountered, who suffer losses, who go through trauma for all of these things, and of course people who are onlooking in terms of it? What concrete ways do you think people can sort of contribute to creating a relief for themselves and the people that they find suffering in this?
Well, Make, I think that you've answered my question in your previous discussion, because it goes beyond advice. As Africans, the Western lifestyle is not helpful. It's completely alien to us. And we must return there, because if I was to speak to Christians, I will tell them and prove to them through the Bible that the nuclear family mentality is completely unchristian and has no basis in the Bible to start with. So Africans were doing something wonderful until they started copying the individualism of, and they brought it into the faith, which is wrong. all Christian life through the Bible is a community life. So in terms of practicality, we ought to have learned from the church in its days of persecution. They were vulnerable, and yet the doors of the homes of Christians was open to the doors of the homes of all Christians who were under persecution. That is where we are now. So my house, for example, and just to correct you, Yop, there are not 50 children. There are 72 children. Some were born there. And we're doing all we can. We're not going up begging. We're not doing an orphanage. We're just loving children. And the other 400 in school where I teach now regularly, so they see me at least twice a week, on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. They see me there. We eat together. We talk together. And one of the boys in my class, in SS3, his father had died when we picked him at age 7. So the mother was still trading a little bit. She died 2 weeks ago. And he has other 3 younger ones. And we're just thinking, how do we talk to him? We prayed in class, but there is a need. So the practicality of touch, of feeling, of empathy goes beyond advice. And if so many good-hearted people are doing this, I'm not talking about bringing children to orphanages and giving, they don't need that. What they need is human touch. They need us as human beings to be with them, something to replace their pain and agony, someplace they can cry on somebody's shoulders and cry, and you cry with them. Those are the healing processes that we need right now. We don't even need so much money. We just need people to open the doors of their homes and be willing to listen and ask these children and just love them and correct them when they've done something wrong. And one day they will sit and cry and cry and cry. I've seen that so many times, and I pray that God will raise so many people in our land who will open the doors of their homes and their hearts to do this. Listen, friend, you can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving.
Thank you, sir. As you and MK were talking, this is my thought. Well done, sir. And I know more are coming in. The numbers are on the increase for you, but thank you for opening your door to these people who are in need, because it is our responsibility if we can open our hearts to. But I'm thinking, using one of the communities in Jos, right, that there's this constant attack on the community, on the people. The youth are frustrated. They are wondering what to do next. Some of them have done all they could, and they're still trying to. And they're just at a place of desperation. You know, the government isn't doing enough. We all know that, if they are even doing anything. But the attacks are ongoing and they are not stopping. Yes, we have so many internally displaced people called IDPs now, people with names and identities that we tag as IDPs. But the villages are still being attacked. What would you say if you have suggestion or thoughts on what can people do, like people living in those places? Permit me to use ordinary Nigerians, people like you and I and other people. What can we do in regards to this aspect of the constant attack and nonstop that is going on? Because more, I remember it was from Maiduguri and we thought it was very far. When it happened in Jos, other states thought it was very far. Now, the whole of the northern areas, states and middle belt, I would say, are all in siege because of this constant attack that is even moving to other parts of Nigeria. What would be your thoughts on what we can do or how we can do concerning this situation?
Well, then, you know, when this thing began in 2001, it began on the 7th of September, 2001. 4 days later, there was 9/11 in the US. And the story of 9/11 took over for the next 9 years. Everybody was talking about 9/11, 9/11. But do you know that from that 2001 till today, Plateau State killings have not stopped? So personally, I've gone to the point where I'm no longer talking to people anymore about our sufferings. And the communities that are been under siege right now, and still the killing is unabated. The government knows, the security forces know, all other Nigerians know, they know exactly what you've talked about, but nobody's doing anything. The one thing I have said in my own case in response, and perhaps the church I lead there is small, but I've told them we're not going anywhere. We'll stay there. We'll cry with the people. We'll do what we can. We'll provide all the help we can until our ban runs out. We're not going anywhere. Even when all our money and food runs out, God will do something. If He doesn't, we die together. Because the inhumanity that's going on in some of these communities, every day it's tears. And I'm wondering whether Nigerians know that what is going on, but they do. They do. Because it's in the news somewhere or another, it's on Facebook, it's well known. But it seems nobody cares anymore. So to cry out about our sufferings to the world for help doesn't seem to make sense anymore. What are we doing? We are literally just encouraging one another to survive, holding on, standing there, and giving encouragement, because we don't know. But one thing I know is this evil will come to an end. Sometimes we get surprise helps. Sometimes we get surprise. From nowhere, somebody emerges and knows our needs in the IDP camps. And let me say, I won't mention the names of any churches, but believe me, at least 2 or 3 denominations in that area are standing strong with the people, whatever happens. Providing food, providing counseling, providing shelter. And I believe very soon providing blankets, because the season is changing in Jos, and our cold season is coming, and it usually comes in that particular areas fiercely, to the point sometimes we're at 2 degrees or even 0 degrees at night. So God is going to help those people. I don't know what else to say.
So this may probably be my last question, if I don't know, I mean, as we progress, but there is the dilemma of practicality and spirituality.
Yeah.
The spiritual minded person is more prone to drawing strength from and building his capacity from a conviction of faith that makes him overcome practical challenges, hunger, violence, murder. He grows through faith to overcome them and live in fear, as preachers like you would hold, where we see Stephen being stoned to death. And I don't mean Stephen Inade, who is underneath watching us from but they would rather triumph and trump over the threat of violence. Instead of yielding to it, they will triumph over it, not yielding, not running away from it, but defeating it with the courage of peace and love, and not reacting, and sort of awakening the superiority of the spirit to triumph that. But that there is also the dilemma, which that's why I say the dilemma of systems deliberately doing that, for which perhaps a pushback is needed. In your view, and when I mean pushback, there is the issue, and I mentioned it earlier, there is the issue of land grab that feeds from violence. There is the issue of religious indoctrination that feeds the violence. The attempt to perhaps land grab, which seem to be very clear and obvious. There is the issue of religious indoctrination by fanatical Islam, which you made a distinction with when you raised the idea of the days when you will go to the Almajiris and sit under, and all of you, nobody, you're not chased out, you're not seen as different, as against the type of fundamentalism where they are indoctrinated to kill, to murder, to take land, to displace, to carry cows and use cows as agencies to create displacement, and the need to sort of make a pushback to that. In this dilemma, what then will be your practical suggestion? Because of course, there is also the sense of either direct complicity with people in government, with government institutions who should act directly, or people in government using the government institutions to deceive even those who should take authority, all sorts of things with the final result that government is sort of now being seen as complicit in this violence. What then would you think in the face of the odds of complicity of government? What then would be clear measures to do effective pushbacks on this? Because not everybody can attain the highest level of spirituality that Stephen and Peter and all the types of people who have gone through that do. What pushback measures do you think are available that people can initiate to move forward? And I speak in reference to the type of work that ICON is probably doing. How do we localize that? What type of other measures can be done locally, whether using the political process, the legal process, the judicial process, or whatsoever means? What measures do you think can do, including the church itself that is there and the local communities that are there? Thank you.
Well, this is probably the best practical question that I have received so far, because what we started to do in the 1980s in Zaria is to document every single event, to document it accurately, honestly, with names, with dates, with time, with the amount of losses and what happened. And since 1987, this documentation has continued and is still being continued till date. The reason being, there are people who have risen up to say the Holocaust never existed. But there are nations that are trying people, even in their 90s, for participating in the Holocaust. One day, the world might turn around and justice will be sought. So if there is no record, justice cannot be sought. So that's the first point I will say to this. So throughout what is happening now, do not think for 1 minute that in this country, the people who are suffering, including the churches, that they are not documenting. They are. And they are documenting accurately with pictures, with facts, with complete data. That is the first one. The second one is that the pushback might well be legal. It should take a legal line, and there is no hurry, because most of the lands that are being grabbed now, the owners have their titles. Most people now are bringing their land to have deeds and titles. One day, their grandchildren will take the matters to court. And perhaps at that time, the grandchildren will be in a position of power, because power is transient. Nobody is going to be in power forever. What I pray should not happen is vengeance, because it only takes another 50 years. And these little children in IDP camps will be 50 years old at that time. They may become senators. They may also seek vengeance. This is history. It has happened in many parts of the world. So I pray that we don't get to the point of vengeance, but a pushback is absolutely necessary. And the people behind this evil of land grab, I believe they know also that a pushback is on the way. And there are governments right now who are raising issues, who can see beyond the wool in our eyes to say, well, this thing is another matter. In the Southwest, for example, they're not taking anything about open grazing. They are not doing the South as a whole. It's not doing it. So it's left for those in the central region to begin to see the handwriting on the wall, even if they don't for political exigencies, for which they will be the losers at the end of the day. But people are documenting their lands. They are finding a place to keep safe their documents. They may not all get killed. Their children are being raised. So pushback is going to come. And it will come. I don't know when, but it will come at the right time. What I do fear and I pray against is that vengeance should not come, because vengeance of those who suffer is usually not good to see at all. So, but definitely documentation, legal position, but finally, politics. For so long, I think that those who have taken on to professions and careers have always said that no, politics is a dirty game and all of that. But I think professionals need to get into it. Doctors, nurses, engineers, architects, and everybody, as lawyers especially, and all, we all need to get politics, because if you do not get into politics, your ethnic area can be overrun. So we need people of all ethnicity to be well represented, which was what happened in the 1960s, earlier on, when Midwest got its referendum and pulled away. Because people were educated, professionals, they got into it, they discussed it peacefully. The Midwestern Nigeria was carved out as a region of its own. And I think people need to get into politics and discuss these issues and talk and talk. It may take years, but at the end of the day, pushback will happen through political means, through legal means, as I said, and through documentations and prosecutions, because one day these evils will get prosecuted. Thank you.
Just to further that question, what efforts are being done, or what efforts could be done to create some sort of internal local alliance with the churches to see these points? Because I find that the most consensus way of getting this done is not just to pray and to push humanitarian supports, but what effort is particularly the Southern Church down there, the Catholics, the Anglicans, the various branches of the Protestants, particularly through CAN and organized measures, are doing to do effective countering? I mean, I'm not seeing the church, for instance, taking these documentations that you're speaking to and presenting it, because I mean, nobody will stop a church. They may be able to stop civil rights activists with fear, but when bishops, pastors of repute organize themselves and hit the national assemblies and say, these are facts of what we are doing, or they begin to, if for instance, they engage with the church outside of Nigeria and say, okay, let's go to look at the church, and then organize and say, okay, why not get to the Human Rights Commission and make a case for an emerging sense of genocide with the data that you see? What ways, what more concrete ways can the church be mobilized to sort of connect with these realities if that is not happening? Thank you.
Well, MK, you're wrong, because if you look at the Anambra elections, you will know that this is a good story. The Anambra elections, it just tells you that things are beginning to change. That is the first one. And many more will happen. People's eyes are watching, people are hearing, and people are getting interested. That is the first one. But secondly, this is not the medium for me to say to you what is being done, because it's being recorded, and I think that I may get quoted badly. But let me tell you that we will never be the same again. If there is anything good that has happened out of all of this evil, these killings, this clear massacre of Christians, particularly in the Middle Belt, the land grab and so on, bad as it may look, There is good coming around the corner. Something good has awakened in the hearts of people. And I trust God. It will not be vengeance, but it will be good. People are beginning to listen. They're beginning to discuss, sometimes openly, mostly underground. But what the church is doing, I will not say.
Okay, I'm sure Stephen is here. He may have a few things to say. Stephen?
No, Ene just invited me here. I'm listening to my Lord Bishop. All I have to just say now is, Bishop Kwashi, thanks for all your advisory role. I'm listening with every sense of obligation and responsibility. I think what I want us to do is to put what Bishop Kwashi is saying into action in our different platforms. And then it's high time we begin to create groups who will be looking into the legal aspect of prosecution. And then those who will be joining even most of what we have been saying about data. Thank God that Bishop actually has been a leader in this regard. So most things that ICON has done is not without endorsement and contribution from Bishop Kwashi. So I think this time around, we need to act. And if we begin to act, I tell you, the president of my Lord Bishop Kwashi will definitely introduce most of those trusted platforms and groups to church leaders you are asking, and by that we can contribute to what church is already doing and other organizations are doing. So that is what I want to say, and God bless you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Sir, do you want to add to what he has said?
No, I'm very grateful. I think I've said most of the things that.
Okay, this is good. Yes. Thank you so much, Stephen, for shedding light to the call to action of what we need to do. This conversation is not the end of it. This is just the beginning of several more discussions on Clubhouse, on our podcast, to see the way forward. I mean, if we talk and talk and talk without action, Nigeria will keep deteriorating. So we need to step up to doing what we need to do. But sir, I am not digressing, but I know that a renowned philosopher and human rights activist Bernard Henry Levy wrote a book, The Will to See, and also did a documentary. And I think for the past few weeks, ICON and other organizations have been engaging with him about what he has done, because he traveled all the way to Nigeria, and I know you were in touch with him, if I'm not mistaken. I just want you to talk a little bit about that and your thoughts on it.
I think that Levy is a renowned philosopher and a writer, and I don't think he has any particular leanings to Christianity as such, but he's human and he can see the evil that's going on. And he came to Nigeria a few times and have looked, and he himself is afraid that what is going on in Nigeria is growing into a genocide that will be worse than Rwanda. And he doesn't want to see Rwanda happen. So he's on the neck of governments and people of goodwill to see that the Nigerian government, the politicians, and the security agencies are unable or unwilling to protect Christians, are unwilling to protect the poor, and are unwilling to stop the destruction of farmlands by cows and by some terrorists who are invading the country. And is raising the alarm now. And you know, when somebody who has no leanings with a particular religion is doing that, you should know that the evil has reached the highest heavens. So we commend him for raising a voice, because what he's presenting are facts, undisputable facts. You cannot dispute them. He has seen them. He has been there. He knows them. He touched them. He knows names. He knows people. So I would say that his writings on the situation of Nigeria should be publicized big time, so that no matter how callous and how sadistic our leaders in Nigeria are, God will touch them somewhere by reading, by writing, or by even rebuke. I think his work is worth looking at closely. I recommend it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And to know how to get to his book, I think one of the best ways is to follow us. So I'm announcing it here, people, and to everyone hearing, watching, listening to me, follow us on our social media handles. ICON Help on Facebook, ICON Help 1 on Instagram and Twitter, and iconhelp.org is the name of our website. If you go there, we've posted a lot of his work, a lot about the book, the documentary, what he is saying, the press conferences, and also beyond him, we have so many resources. Sometimes when we talk about this and you're far off, it seems like we're telling a story. But we have videos from victims who are experiencing this, who have experienced this, and all of that. If you go to these platforms that I've just mentioned, you would get more on it. We're also on YouTube. So if you go to our YouTube channel, ICON Help, even this discussion you shall find there and a lot more. I encourage you to do that, but not just for ICON. Go into digging about Nigeria and let's come together and continue to work so Nigeria can be the country that we all hope for. Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, for coming on board to this very new machine that you call to engage with us, to advise us. I know that this is just the beginning of a series that will dig in more, so we'll be able to become more educated to continue with the work. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody, and God bless.
And okay, so if there are no questions, I can see that it's been a quiet room. I hope that it's about taking what we've said. Most of them are not new, but taking in, digesting, and then saying, how else can we come together to do this? MK, I don't know if you have a last word, my able co-moderator. I appreciate you and I thank you for joining us in this room to discuss this issue. MK, do you have something more to say?
Just to thank our bishop again, and particularly those who have come in to listen in and stay through or participated. Thank you very much for lending your ear. Listening is a very powerful way of supporting. It builds consciousness, and those who listen with positive intentions and good conscience and good faith, always somehow, even by words of prayers or even a breath or a sigh, send off positive energy, and God sees the words that we can't see in those type of sighs, and he sees and positive energy that you send, and it has its own effect. So thank you for being here. The least we can continue to have is to listen more on these things and do your sighs and prayers, and go beyond that if you can, if you're gifted to do that, to continue to see that people who suffer get help from us, from the way we can. Thank you very much, all participants and audience. Thank you, Ven. Over to you as you round down.
Okay, thank you so much. Eneto, thank you for coming on board. I know you're very busy, but you took out time. And Stephen, I thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for joining in to just be part of this podcast. I appreciate you. Like MK said, from me to everyone, we appreciate you. We will do this again, hopefully in a week's time, and we'll continue with the discussion, and we're bringing another renowned and respectful man to dig into this discussion. My hope and my prayer is that we'll keep speaking up for Nigeria and we'll never give up on the country. Again, if you've not followed the club, please look up above the stage. You will see a green button. Click on it and follow the club. This is an ICON room. ICON is about advocating for Nigeria, the right to live, the right to religious freedom, and the protection of the vulnerable against all forms of religious persecution. So again, bye-bye. Have a wonderful day until we meet again. So I will close the room in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a beautiful evening, morning, and afternoon. Bye-bye.